St. Louis, Missouri, on our way to see Jay Rabinowitz, Alter Trading. But again, let's take out recycled aluminum. Can these products be made? Is there enough aluminum bauxite and enough mining and enough of that to be able to produce this? Or we'd have to dramatically change industry? What would have to happen? Take recycled aluminum out of the picture. What would have to happen for products like this to be made? Or do they make them out of steel?
Well, I don't think you want to make them out of steel. The whole idea is get lighter, cars get more
fuel efficient.
I think that the answer is that you would never want to have to find the answer to that question.
But see, this is part of what, see, when it leaves our facilities, and there's thousands of us in America, people know, well, what do you do with recycled aluminum? Where's it going? Well, it's going to your new Toyota. So recycled aluminum plays a major role in the U.S. auto industry. To make cylinder heads, what's your alternative if it isn't recycled aluminum? It plays a major role in our environment.
If it isn't recycled aluminum, I guess the other would be to change materials.
You could
go to pure aluminum, which would be much more expensive.
Because it reduces the emissions when it is remelted and repurposed. To do bauxite, so your cost of fabricating
Raw material would go way up to get primary metal.
I like to say, CO2 emissions don't have a border. And when you know that you're part of reducing the emissions, that our industry is the leading industry of reducing CO2 emissions, you get a sense of pride. Because the recycled materials industry is where it all begins. Our industry plays a main role. We are the key and most vital supplier of raw materials because without our industry, this beautiful Toyota Tundra that you see behind me cannot be made. And Toyota, they agreed to do this because they know they're one of the leading manufacturers in the world of autos, but they're doing it in the most environmentally sound way possible. You know, recycled aluminum is driving the auto industry here in America. The show Repurposed is showing how recycled aluminum and the automotive industry are dependent on each other. Okay, what I learned yesterday was interesting, that virgin aluminum doesn't make good motors or engine heads and transmission housing. Because here at Toyota, you can clearly see that none of these motors can be made without recycled aluminum. The aluminum features that you see in here, again, all made with recycled aluminum. Those ladles coming from next door, starting the whole process, because without that ladle of molten aluminum, nothing here happens.
Aluminum allows us to use a high percentage of recycled content in our vehicles.
Recycled materials industry, we supply the raw materials to the secondary aluminum smelters that make the ingot and the molten aluminum that go into making the engine blocks, the engine heads. I had no idea that you could not make the aluminum components for a motor block, cylinder heads from virgin aluminum.
Especially in our engines. So that really contributes to one of our values, to contribute to a circular economy in North America.
We do not make molten aluminum at all here. We receive it 100% from most.
This material is baled in a baler like our Sierra Rev 2. This is the final process in a lot of the aluminum that will end up in the factories like most. But the beautiful thing here about this plant here, what you guys are doing are taking the processed aluminum from the facilities and you're making another raw material. So recycled aluminum, actually the alloy of recycled aluminum creates better strength. So it's kind of like a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
They don't know they don't understand this is an automobile.
We are a true closed loop supplier in all sense of the word.
And as we know, aluminum is infinitely recyclable. So at the end of life, this vehicle probably make new Toyotas down the road. They are truly a green manufacturer. We need to celebrate it because they are using materials come from recycled commodities, such as steel, aluminum, and copper. It doesn't get any better than that. Well, you know, I think what surprised me was how much aluminum is underneath and that's involved in making the automobile. Real simple, it's beautifully designed, the engineering, but there are a lot more components made from aluminum, cast aluminum, than I knew. You got one of these motors in the back for us to see, right?
Yeah, completely out of the truck, open.
Let's go take a look at that. It's really kind of cool to see it in being able to go around it and touch it like this, and knowing this is what's inside that Tundra. I got to be honest, I feel pretty damn good when I look at this motor and know that the aluminum comes from our industry. The recycled materials industry supplying the raw materials to the company like Most, which is next door to the Toyota motor plant there in Missouri that makes these cylinders heads, and to know that the raw materials that make it come from our industry. You don't make it from virgin aluminum. I think that's the best part as far as I'm concerned. It takes recycled aluminum. So our industry, you know, they like to call it essential. I like to call our industry vital, because when you go to the hospital, they don't take your essential signs, do they? They take your vital signs. And if you ask an automotive manufacturer like Toyota, they're making their motors and transmission housings and so many other components from, and they say recycled aluminum, well, it's vital to them because they know they're doing their part to become carbon neutral and reducing their carbon footprint in the manufacturing of automobiles here in America.
You know, across the globe, we're moving towards a carbon neutrality commitment by 2050 of, you know, carbon neutrality and nature positive. And we can't do that without recycled aluminum. We can't do it without recycled content. And, you know, globally, we're trying to figure out how we can continue to use more recycled content in our vehicles.
The home run is actually seeing the actual part that I can go lift the hood in the car, point to. That to me, that's just seeing it, being able to go and lift the hood of a Toyota in the future and say, I saw that made. That is made from recycled aluminum. It's undeniable, start to finish, is because of the recycled materials industry. And without us, that doesn't get made. Creating the link that that motor isn't made from junk or waste. The Toyota manufacturing way is an art. Matt, what an incredible tour that you gave me. I've been thinking, what am I going to ask you first? But what the biggest thing was, you told me that the engine, the cylinder heads manufactured here are the same in every Toyota plant across the world.
That is correct.
This is cores, this is casting. This is
Okay.
where I make the aluminum
And
part.
where do these cores come from?
These cores come from sand. So they make the
The light bulb just went off.
they make the internal ports.
All right, tell us about Kaizen. What is Kaizen?
So Kaizen is continuous improvement. It's to take something that...
It's a Japanese term.
It's a Japanese term for continuous improvement. It's basically take something and make it better.
So he sets the sand in the dies. That makes the internal passages, the ports, the water jackets, and the aluminum casts around it. So if you think about it, these are ports, the exhaust ports.
These ports are made out of sand, man-made sand, all recycled in the plant itself, so there's no waste there.
100% reuse it.
You know, they use the word Kaizen for continuous improvement.
So first, Kaizens are by nature small.
Okay.
So when we talk Kaizen, we're typically talking small things, but typically as an engineer in my younger days, I worked with a lot of dies, whether it be making different shapes, different cooling passages, but improvements to the dies to reduce defects would be some of the bigger things that I've done.
You inject it.
The metal comes up from below.
All the black that I'm seeing are the inserts.
The black is sand.
It's all sand. Those dies that we saw where heads are being casted into, that's the precision. That is almost the key to the ability to do it on a quality level, right?
That is correct. The die is very, very integral to good quality.
We'll inspect the cores as they come by from the core line. She'll inspect them to quality, looking for broken cores or any defects.
Okay.
And then she will transport the finished cylinder head from the AGC to the finishing line.
So aluminum can be cast in a steel die, so we can make very precision shapes. With the casting, we can make it very near net shape, almost to the exact shape you need it with minimal machining. Many times steel is cast in sand. You leave a lot of extra stock on there to machine it off, and your intricacy is only as detailed as your sand mold.
So now you're going down to the finishing line. So the first step is a serial number. So we serialize every part. Everyone has a unique number.
Well, what I've taken in is the molten aluminum, how the cores are put into the die caster, and then they make the casting of the heads. You got to serial number it, you got to shake it off, deburring it, and now it's got to get washed, and now it's ready to go where?
Another inspection process.
Inspections. Something fascinating to me is your raw material supply chain to make all these engine heads is right next door.
It's very short.
You're saving 95% CO2 emissions and energy consumption in the 90th percentile. This may not look like something pretty and sexy, but who's doing more for the environment than what you're doing here? Nobody.
Absolutely. And we try to take it even a step further than that,
Oh, let's
John.
hear this.
Because if you just remelt this into a solid piece of aluminum like ingot, that's great. You've saved that percentage that you talked about, but you've still got to remelt that, use energy to remelt. There's some recovery loss there. The beauty of our partnership with Toyota next door is that we can take it from a melt to molten directly into a part. So we're even reducing that footprint further.
And there's your carbon emissions for delivering your molten aluminum doesn't exist because, what is it, 100, 150 yards from your, at the end of the line here to there. What you see here is the incredible recycled materials industry. That is molten aluminum heading to the Toyota Missouri plant to make cylinder heads. This is incredible. Right next door to a motor plant recycled aluminum is being transformed. They bring their supplier right next door to them. The auto industry in America truly depends on the recycled materials industry because the aluminum that you just saw being transported in a crucible, that ladle's full of 3,000 pounds of molten aluminum. To reduce logistics and to know right next door, their supplier of the raw material, their molten aluminum, is coming right next door. Is this typical of the Toyota manufacturing world, or are you unique here in Troy, Missouri?
It is common. It's not 100% of the plants, but most of the plants do have a separate smelter, secondary smelter next door to supply that molten aluminum.
Without recycled aluminum, they'd have to find a different metal because the cost of you using aluminum bauxite, which is the virgin aluminum, is prohibitive. Think about it. Virgin materials and making the motor blocks and making engine heads is prohibited.
On the next episode of Repurposed.
All right, here's what we're doing. We're waiting for them to fill a ladle of molten aluminum to do the handoff.